I didn't expect them to sell my room, not while I was still living in it. My name is Nathan Cole. I was 20 years old, working part-time shifts at a pizza joint while teaching myself to code out of a borrowed laptop I kept hidden under my mattress. I wasn't in college anymore. Dropped out after one semester. Not because I failed, but because I couldn't afford to keep pretending I belonged there. I'd sat in those classrooms, surrounded by kids who wore their last names like status symbols, while I counted down the minutes to clock in for my second job. I was still figuring things out, and that wasn't acceptable in my family. My father, Richard Cole, didn't believe in figuring things out. He believed in war metaphors, in medals, in ironed shirts and alarm clocks that rang at 4:45 a.m. A retired Army colonel turned city councilman, he thought life was a march and weakness was treason. You earned your place, or you were gone. My mother, Dana, never said much. Her silence was louder than most people's shouting. She ran charity luncheons and managed the PTA like a corporate empire. Our house was always immaculate, filled with hollow decor and fake smiles. Love wasn't in abundance. Expectations were. My younger sister Chloe was the golden child, a junior at a private university, interning at a tech firm Dad used to sit on the board of. She was everything I wasn't: polished, obedient, successful looking. She once told a friend I was just figuring himself out, with the same tone someone might use for a toddler smearing paint on the walls. So, I kept my head down, slept in my childhood room, took out the trash without being asked, made enough to pay for gas and my cell phone, spent every spare minute trying to learn Python and Solidity through spotty Wi-Fi, and I never complained. That weekend, I'd gone to stay with a friend across town. He was letting me use his desktop rig to run some back-end code I'd been building. 48 hours later, I came home to find the driveway full and the front door open. Laughter spilled out into the late afternoon air. Something smelled like expensive beef, my father's favorite cut, a dinner party. I didn't think anything of it. Not yet. I slipped in quietly, not wanting to interrupt, and headed straight for the stairs. But I stopped halfway up. My bedroom door was wide open. Inside, the furniture was gone. The posters, my mattress, even the dent in the drywall I'd punched when I was 16. Gone. Instead, there were fresh sheets, neatly folded towels, and a suitcase. Someone else's suitcase. I walked in on autopilot. The closet was filled with unfamiliar clothes. The desk held a MacBook that wasn't mine. There was a scented candle burning on the windowsill. A voice behind me said, "Hey man, you Nathan." I turned around. A guy maybe my age, maybe a little older, hair slicked back, phone in hand, a smile like he was trying too hard to sell me something. "I'm Devin, your cousin, staying here for a while. Your parents didn't mention it?" He held out his hand like this was normal, like he hadn't just opened a wound with a first name. I didn't take it. Downstairs, voices erupted in laughter. I could hear my father's booming cadence, the tone he used when telling war stories that weren't his to tell. I left the room, his room now, and walked down the hallway numb. In the hallway closet, my belongings were shoved into 2 garbage bags. No boxes, no labels, just trash bags. One was half open. My hoodie was balled up inside it, the same one Mom used to borrow when the heater broke. I picked them up and went down the stairs. The dining room was full of strangers and relatives I hadn't seen since my high school graduation. Everyone looked nice. Tailored suits, cocktail dresses, polished shoes. The chandelier I used to get yelled at for swinging from was gleaming like it had something to prove. Then I saw him. My father stood at the head of the table, fork in hand, telling some story about discipline. He caught sight of me over someone's shoulder, and for a moment he paused. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that's made for an audience. "There he is," he said, loud enough to quiet the room. "Nathan, ladies and gentlemen, our little wanderer." Polite laughter. I stood in the entryway, holding my life in plastic bags. "You're back early," he said, as if I were a guest. "We thought you'd be gone all weekend. Where am I supposed to sleep?" I asked. The room quieted. He raised his eyebrows. "We've made other arrangements." "You sold my room," I said flatly. "It's not your room," he replied. "You're 20. You're a man. You don't pay rent. You don't go to school. What did you expect?" I looked at my mother. She busied herself with a wine glass. My father chuckled. "Failures don't get to stay under our roof. We're raising winners in this house." Someone laughed. A cousin. Maybe 2. The kind of laughter that's permission-seeking. I nodded. Just once. Then I walked to the door, the trash bag slung over my shoulder. As I left, I passed the family portrait hanging in the hallway. One from years ago. Me in a wrinkled polo, Chloe in her dance uniform, Mom smiling like she meant it. My father's face was sunburnt and proud. I noticed something I hadn't before. My face had been scratched out, a faint gouge across the cheek and eyes. Not torn, not accidental. Scratched. I opened the door and stepped into the dusk. There were no goodbyes, no apologies, no final shouts of, "You'll regret this." They didn't care enough to regret it. I drove to nowhere. Slept in my car outside a 24-hour gym I couldn't afford to enter. Ate leftover pizza from my shift the night before. Stared at my reflection in the side view mirror and tried to remember what it felt like to be part of something. I didn't cry. I just watched the sky turn from orange to black, and I whispered 4 words I didn't even fully believe yet. "You'll remember this moment." Then I closed my eyes and disappeared. There's a kind of silence that only comes from sleeping in your car during winter. It's not peaceful. It's suffocating, heavy, with everything you're not saying, not doing, not becoming. For 2 months, that silence was my companion. I parked behind an old gym in a strip mall that closed at 10 but left its Wi-Fi running until midnight. I'd sit in the driver's seat, laptop propped on the steering wheel, blanket around my shoulders and fingers stiff from the cold as I typed. Python at first, then Solidity, then whatever back-end frameworks I could learn off free repositories and old GitHub scraps. During the day, I cleaned toilets. I'd landed a janitorial job at a co-working space downtown. Not one of the trendy tech incubators, but the kind of cheap, windowless office units freelancers and laid-off execs rented by the week. $11.75 an hour, 3 nights a week. Not enough to get back on my feet, but enough to keep my car running and my stomach full of vending machine crackers and dollar coffees. I didn't talk to anyone. I made sure to always wear gloves, always keep my head down, until the night I stayed late, really late, and someone noticed me. He was hunched over a server rack in one of the back rooms, untangling cables with the tired, practiced hands of someone who didn't care anymore. Early 50s, gray in his beard, hoodie pulled low. "You missed a spot," he said without looking up. I looked down. I had a trail of shoe prints across the tile I'd just mopped. I started to apologize, but he waved me off. "You're the kid with the ThinkPad, right? Always typing." I froze. "Yeah. You building something?" "Trying," I said. He turned toward me slowly. "You know what you're doing?" I didn't answer. He studied me for a beat. "Come back here tomorrow. Midnight. Bring coffee." The next night, I did. His name was Mason Talley, ex-CTO of a mid-level logistics firm. Got pushed out during a merger. Too expensive. Too opinionated. Too done with corporate bullshit. Now he maintained some of the back-end systems for the co-working space and picked up freelance gigs on the side. Mostly he drank energy drinks and ranted about startups, but he knew things. And he saw something in me. For weeks, we'd sit in the back room while I showed him code I was writing. He didn't compliment it, just circled the flaws, explained the bottlenecks, and occasionally muttered, "Not bad." That was his version of praise. One night, I showed him a prototype, a lightweight API scraper that could pull foreclosure trends from public property databases and visualize them across zip codes. It was janky, incomplete, and barely optimized. Mason stared at it for a while. Then he leaned back and said, "You ever think about real estate?" "Not really." "You should." Then he got up and left the room. A minute later, he came back with a box of old hard drives and a server that looked like it hadn't been dusted since Obama's first term. "Set it up. You can use this space after hours. Don't break anything." That night was the first time in 2 months I didn't sleep in my car. I crashed in the server room, head on my backpack, laptop humming beside me. On social media, my family still looked perfect. Chloe had a new apartment in Midtown. She posted about crushing it at her internship, photos of her standing next to clean whiteboards with buzzwords and fake smiles. My mother commented hearts on every post. My father only ever commented one word: proud. They never mentioned me. The family group chat had long since gone quiet on my end. The last message I'd sent, weeks ago, was still unread. Sometimes late at night, I'd check Zillow. My father had 4 properties under his name, 2 rentals, 1 house he bought after the army, and our family home. I memorized their square footage, assessed market fluctuations, and wrote algorithms to track their valuation dips. Not out of spite, out of curiosity. Mason found me one morning, passed out on the floor beside the server stack, an empty vending machine wrapper in my hand. He nudged me with his foot. "You want to eat like a janitor the rest of your life?" I sat up, blinking at him. "Good," he said. "Then do something." 2 months turned into 5, 5 into 7. By then, I had 3 small clients. Property managers using my tool to predict vacancy turnover and default risk. Nothing huge. A few thousand here and there, but it felt like oxygen. Mason started calling me Ghost because I never gave my real name to clients. I registered an LLC under A. Lockwood, bought a P.O. box, paid for a domain name, and started filing taxes like a ghost too. He told me, "Don't give them your name. Not until it's worth something." I listened. Meanwhile, Chloe's name was everywhere. A local magazine named her one of Atlanta's young innovators. She gave a TEDx talk about being raised by visionaries. She told the audience, "I grew up watching my father build empires and my mother balance 10 things at once. I was never mentioned, but I kept watching, and I kept working." Then came Christmas. I hadn't seen them in almost a year. I walked past the family house just after midnight on the 24th. Lights on, laughter echoing from inside. Chloe's voice floated out the window. Something about promotion, something about Dad pulling strings. I stood there for a while. Then I walked to the old park down the road and opened my laptop. The server was up. The scripts were live. My newest tool tracked property title transfers and debt stacking in metro areas. I'd built it from the same bones of the foreclosure tracker, but now it flagged owner risk based on income anomalies and projected shortfalls. It sent me a ping. One of my father's rental properties had just hit a 90-day delinquency flag. I stared at it, did nothing, closed the laptop. The next day, Mason handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, $5,000. "You saved that guy's ass," he said, referring to a client who'd avoided an investor lawsuit thanks to my tool. "You earned that." I stared at the number. I'd never seen that much money at once. Not in my name, not in a single envelope. I nodded. "You're not nothing," Mason said quietly. "You're not ready, but you're not nothing." That night, I checked the family group chat one last time. Still unread. So I opened a new note on my phone. Just 4 words. "They made me disappear." Then I turned off notifications and got back to work. Success didn't feel like what I expected. It didn't come with champagne. No applause, not even a text. It came in the form of a folder. A 43-page PDF from a venture capital firm in San Francisco. A mid-tier outfit I'd pitched 6 months earlier, thinking they'd never reply. Inside, a seed round agreement, $400,000 to scale A. Lockwood's predictive analytics for the residential rental market. They called my product risk quantification software for working-class landlords. I called it survival math. I signed the deal from a prepaid motel room 3 states away from Atlanta. Then I closed the blinds and slept for 17 hours straight. With funding came people, quiet ones, like me. A developer in Bulgaria I'd met through a Solidity forum, a UX designer who freelanced out of Malaysia, a friend of Mason's who'd lost his job managing a data warehouse for a dying bank. We weren't flashy. We didn't post about grind culture. We built. Lockwood grew silently. No public team page, no Twitter presence, just one sleek website with a black header that read, "Precision forecasting for uncertain time." Our software flagged misaligned mortgages, income inconsistencies, and upcoming vacancies before they hit the books. Property owners didn't like it. Lenders loved it. In less than 18 months, 6 regional banks signed licensing deals. One of them happened to underwrite a number of properties in Atlanta. That's when I started getting reports, not personal ones, data. My father's name began to pop up again, not in family group chats or news interviews, but in foreclosure risk tables. 2 of his rentals were underwater. One tenant had sued for negligence after the ceiling collapsed. The inspection was flagged in our system. He didn't know I was watching. He didn't even know I existed anymore. We moved into a real office eventually. I chose a building in the heart of downtown. Glass facade, no signage, just clean lines and high floors. The receptionist's desk sat in a marble lobby with 2 elevators and a panoramic view of the skyline. From the far corner of my office, I could see our old neighborhood, the place where I used to lie awake at night, listening to my father's footsteps creak past my door. The door he would later rip off its hinges to make room for someone else. One afternoon, while reviewing a list of flagged portfolios, I saw a name that stopped me cold. Richard D. Cole. Primary borrower. 2014 investment mortgage. Property. 1974 Fremont Avenue. The address didn't surprise me. The flag did. A lien had been placed against the property for failure to pay back taxes. The debt was small, manageable, but it was enough to make the bank nervous, and enough for me to buy the debt under a shell entity. I did it with the same expression I'd worn the night I carried my life out in trash bags. Nothing changed. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak. I just bought the lien. Then I bought another, the title insurance policy on his second rental. Then I purchased the debt bundle on his business partner's warehouse, which triggered a clause that defaulted their shared investment. Each deal was just a data entry. Click, sign, transfer. No one questioned it. Why would they? I was just a name on a screen. A. Lockwood Capital Holdings. Meanwhile, Chloe's name started fading from the digital spaces it once dominated. Her Instagram went dark. Her LinkedIn listed currently exploring new opportunities. Mason found an article buried on a legal bulletin site. Her company had been hit with an SEC investigation, not directly tied to her, but enough to sink her stock options. I didn't ask for details, but I knew what she'd feel when the silence hit. The world doesn't scream when it forgets you. It just drifts. The first real confirmation that I'd succeeded didn't come from a press release. It came from an email. Subject line, urgent, request for meeting, R. Cole Holdings. I stared at it for a while. Then I called my assistant, Marianne. "Have them fill out a client intake form," I said. "No priority flag." "Of course," she replied. "Also," I added, "block out the lobby cameras that day." I acquired the family home quietly. Through a shell buyer, I purchased the mortgage off a hedge fund that had picked it up during a mass trade. Then I moved the mortgage into a different servicer and delayed the property tax payments intentionally. 6 weeks later, the house was flagged for pre-foreclosure. I didn't evict them. I just let the notices arrive. That same week, our company signed a $1.8 million contract with the city's urban planning division to assess housing vulnerability in decaying neighborhoods. The councilman assigned to the project? Richard Cole, my father. He stood on stage during the announcement ceremony, shaking hands, smiling wide. Behind him was a display screen showing the software's name. He didn't know it was mine. Not yet. Mason died that month. Heart failure, quick, quiet, alone. He left me 2 things: a duffel bag full of old hard drives and a note on the back of a bar napkin. "Build it like they can't take it from you." I read it once, then again. Then I locked the napkin in a drawer beside my desk. Late one night, I received a message from Marianne. 2 walk-ins in reception. No appointment. Older couple. Insist they need to speak to the CEO. Names Dana and Richard Cole. I stood for a long time at the edge of the window, watching the last lights of the city flicker out. It was raining. The kind of slow, cold rain that didn't cleanse anything, just reminded you of what you'd already buried. I straightened my jacket, adjusted my collar, then walked toward the elevator. "The name on the documents is mine now," I said to no one, and pressed the button. The elevator ride felt longer than usual, not because of the floors, 32 in total, but because of what was waiting at the bottom. I didn't feel anxious, or angry, or triumphant. I felt nothing at all. The kind of emptiness you earn by carrying something long enough for it to calcify. When the doors slid open, I stepped into the lobby. Dana and Richard Cole sat on the leather bench near the reception desk. My mother wore pearls, the same set she reserved for gala events and magazine interviews. Her coat was camel wool, designer, slightly worn. Her posture was flawless, except for her hands. They trembled when she saw me. My father stood as I approached. His once perfect posture was slightly slumped, hair thinner, eyes duller. Still, he tried to puff his chest out. I stopped a few feet away, just far enough to keep control of the space. "Mr. and Mrs. Cole," I said. They blinked. My father furrowed his brow. I'm the one you came to see," I said evenly. "Follow me." I turned before they could speak and walked toward the private conference room. They followed. No small talk, no hugs, no tears, just footsteps and silence. The room was glass-walled and soundproof. I took a seat at the head of the table. They sat across from me, unsure of what to do with their hands. My mother broke first. "You've done well," she said, her voice brittle. "We didn't realize who I was," I finished. She nodded. My father spoke next. "We didn't come for a reunion. This is business." "Of course," I said. "Tell me about the foreclosure." He flinched, not at the fact I knew, but at how casually I said it. "We're in a temporary bind," he said. "A business partner defaulted. Some funds were delayed. We just need bridge financing to restructure. 30 days, maybe 60, just until we stabilize. And the house. It's sentimental," my mother said quickly. "That home was sold 3 months ago," I cut in. "To one of our subsidiaries. Your tenants now. Rent is due on the 15th. Their faces went blank. "I'm not here to argue," I continued. "I have a proposal." I slid a folder across the table. My father didn't touch it. My mother opened it with trembling fingers. The terms were simple. I would purchase the defaulted business entirely. They would be allowed to remain in the house for 1 year, rent-free. After that, they vacate. No negotiation. In exchange, they sign a non-disparagement agreement and a personal apology letter, notarized, explaining why they cut their son off and sold his room while he still lived in their home. The letter would not be published. It would not be posted. It would be mine, and mine alone. They didn't speak. The silence stretched like wire. "You think this makes you better than us?" my father finally said. "No," I replied. "Just free of you." My mother leaned forward. "Nathan?" I held up a hand. Not raised, not shaking, just enough to make her stop. "You called me a failure," I said, still calm. "You removed me from our home, replaced me like furniture, and now you've walked into my building requesting money. We didn't know," she whispered. "That I'd succeed?" I asked. "Or that I'd remember?" My father stood abruptly. "You want us to grovel." I didn't blink. "I don't want anything. I'm offering a way out." He paced the room, hands in fists. "This is pathetic. You always played the victim. Even now, I own your house," I said quietly. He stopped. You humiliated me in front of a room full of people, I said. Now you can sign a letter, or you can pack by next Tuesday. My mother's voice cracked. We're your parents. No, I said. You were a lesson. She looked down. My father stared at me, jaw clenched. I taught you discipline. I gave you structure. You think you got here on your own? I stood slowly. I got here in silence. I got here in hunger. I got here sleeping in a car while you smiled for campaign photos. The air felt cold. You remember what you told me? I asked. He said nothing. I leaned forward. Failures don't get to stay under our roof. That's what you said. He looked away. I walked to the door and opened it. You have 2 minutes to decide. Then security walks you out. I waited in the hallway. The door stayed closed for a long time. Then it opened. My mother walked out first. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She held the folder in her arms like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My father followed, slower this time. He didn't speak. Neither did I. As they exited the lobby, Marianne glanced at me from behind the desk. Was that who I think it was? I nodded. She tilted her head. Want me to shred the letter after they send it? No, I said. Keep it. Lock it up. She nodded. I walked back to my office. The skyline was still gray. The city still buzzed below, uncaring, unknowing. I pulled open my desk drawer and placed the folder inside, right next to Mason's napkin. Then, I closed it and sat in silence. The letter arrived 3 days later. Signed, notarized, typed on thick white stock with the family crest watermark in the corner. The same design my father once paid a graphic designer to create for legacy reasons. Inside, it read, "We regret the actions taken against our son, Nathan Cole. At the time, we believed we were making a difficult but necessary choice. We now understand it was a failure of empathy, judgment, and love. We disowned someone we didn't understand instead of trying to support him. He has, without question, proven himself more than worthy of respect, not because of what he's accomplished, but because of what he endured to get here. We're sorry. No embellishment, no signature flourish, just black ink and silence." I folded the letter and placed it beside Mason's napkin. Then I locked the drawer. The house was auctioned quietly 2 weeks later. I watched it unfold on a live stream meant for registered bidders. Anonymous usernames pinged prices into the side panel, while the auctioneer droned in a voice stripped of emotion. $227,000, $232,000, $238,000. A woman in a light gray blazer and sneakers stood inside the old living room, filming a video for her real estate channel. She laughed as she opened the pantry, joked about the outdated backsplash, called the guest room a work-from-home opportunity. She didn't know I once slept in that room while hiding my broken laptop under the bed, trying to write code by flashlight. She didn't know anything, and that felt right. Chloe called a week later. I didn't answer. She texted instead. I didn't know about any of it. I'm sorry. If you ever want to talk, just talk. I'm here. I stared at the message. Then I archived the thread. At night, I worked less. My new place was quiet. Smaller than you'd expect for someone who'd been on the cover of a VC newsletter last quarter. No gold plaques, no glass trophies, just a whiteboard, a coffee pot, and a photograph of the Atlanta skyline taken through the window of a car I no longer owned. Mason's napkin sat in a frame on the wall. Build it like they can't take it from you. I thought about that a lot, because for a long time I'd built everything around what I'd lost. The room, the name, the place at the table. But I was starting to understand that maybe what they took didn't matter. Maybe they didn't erase me. Maybe they carved out the silence I needed to make something real. One morning, my assistant forwarded me an email. Subject, Community Alumni Highlight. Councilman Richard Cole's son, featured in National Innovation Index. Attached was a PDF draft. It featured a full-page spread on A. Lockwood, complete with my real name, Nathan Cole, listed in the byline. The council had added the note themselves. We're proud to see homegrown talent flourish at the national level. My father's signature was at the bottom. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, remove my name from any future political materials. No endorsement granted, ever. Then I deleted the file. That weekend, I visited the neighborhood. Not the house, just the area. The park I used to sit in when I had nowhere else to go. The bus stop where I once slept with my laptop strapped to my chest. The alley behind the convenience store where Mason had once shown me how to trace VPN data through a proxy chain. None of it had changed. A teenager sat on the bench where I used to cry. He wore a hoodie with holes in it, tapped away at a phone that looked 3 generations behind. He didn't see me, and I didn't interrupt. I walked back to my car, sat behind the wheel, and stared at my own hands for a while. They didn't shake anymore. There was no anger in them, no proof left to deliver. I had built something, not just a company, not just revenge. A version of myself that didn't flinch when someone said failure. A version that didn't need their permission to exist. Somewhere, someone was probably laughing at their parents right now, or posting a rant online, or plotting a dramatic takedown. But that wasn't me, and it never had been. As the sun set behind the skyline, I whispered something only I needed to hear. They gave me nothing, so I built something they'd never understand. Then I turned the key and drove away. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.